Welcome to Legacy and Leadership with David McKeen. In my 20 plus years in the business world, I have noticed a common theme amongst all my clients. They're phenomenal leaders who are concerned about leaving a legacy in three main areas: community, family, and financial. So join me as we talk to proven leaders in their fields about their best practices regarding legacy and leadership. It seems from my perspective that our world has become so polarized, right? That we, that we have our own views, pick the topic, right?
Sure.
We have our own views and we just pull away from each other and say, this is my view and this is my view.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't try to come together or reach,
That's right.
understand people's point of view. How is you as a leader, as our world has become more polarized, how have you worked to bridge that divide in your career?
I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth.
Please,
okay, so we'll say that on the front end. I think people often ask me, hey, what did grad school do for you? And I think it does different things for different people. But one of the things doing the PhD did for me is it gave me more humility in approaching any subject.
Okay.
And the old adage of everything looks simple if you get far enough away. And
right.
The closer you get, man, this is really actually
complex.
These are real people. I see how they think that. And so I think the first thing I'd want to do is just listen. Listen, advance goodwill. That's part of the golden rule. How would you want to be treated? Advance goodwill to the other person. Hey, these are smart people with good intentions.
Right.
That's not always the case, right? We live in a fallen world, but it sure does help if you can assume that. And then just actually listen, not pretend to listen so that you get credibility, but like actually listen, seek to understand. We would say as professors, you're able to understand their position so well that you could repeat it back to them and they would say, yeah, that's what I believe. I think only then are you, even if you want to persuade them, especially if you want to persuade them, you've got to understand. So there's some empathy there. And so I think that's helpful. I think also one of the ways you make progress is you actually have to have convictions, about things. And there are things that we should nuance and gray areas. And then there's a lot that's just really clear.
Black and white.
They're black and white. And that mean you have to be combative or mad, but you can't be settled and resolute. And I would even say the only way you can be calm and winsome and persuasive is actually you do have settled convictions about things. I'm not mad about it. I'm trying to fight you.
Right.
But we believe this is good. And, as a Christian, maybe it's something you would say, we believe the Lord has spoken here clearly. Right. He says he's not going to bless another way or another route. And so I think, again, beginning with great intentions, advancing trust, empathy has become for some is a complicated word these days. But I think it's a virtue to say, hey, let me just seek to understand where you're at, even if I disagree with you, why you're thinking through these things. Right. I think it's super helpful. You see leaders that do well. It's still 2026 is just fraught with. I mean, name a major group, political party, country, global coalition like NATO. They are all struggling. Right. So this is beyond, whatever your little version of that is. So it's just challenging, but it's all the more reason to, hey, let's just slow down, bring the temperature down, build trust, relationships, and see what the Lord will do in that. So. That's
extremely helpful, and I want to emphasize a couple of points, but I think the calmness is the absolute right framework to come to that meeting, that conversation, whatever with, because if you're heightened, if your hackles are up, right? Sure. You're going to be combative and you're not going to be open. But the other part that you said that I really, really loved is actively listen.
That's right.
Because most of us, and at times I'm guilty of this, are waiting to talk 100% rather than actively listening.
Yes. Yeah. You may agree more than you think if you would just listen. And this is true in our marriages. It's true. It's true in every sphere of life.
Right.
And so, and I'm droning on about this is because there are four fingers here pointing back at me. It's easy to talk about these things and harder to embrace them. But I think when we're at our best, I've heard it said that confidence is calm. Confidence is calm.
I love it.
And I think that's true. When I'm most afraid, I'm most angry.
Yeah.
When I'm most angry, I'm most combative. When I'm most just settled, Remember who the Lord is, what his promises are. That's a much more fun person to be around. I'm sure that's true of you and
without a doubt.
Listening here. So.
Without a doubt. I want to go back to something you said and spend a few minutes on this subject. You mentioned how your PhD in organizational leadership humbled you.
Yeah.
Why did it humble you?
Boy, how much time do we have again? It humbled me in a lot of ways. I mean, I think if my elementary school teachers are watching this, they're like, wow. So Charles is leading the school now. Yeah. And I'm not saying I was a terrible student, but I think it humbled me in some ways because, I don't consider myself some great intellectual luminary. I'm an average, I would say I'm a blue collar professor.
Okay.
And so it's just hard, and you know this, but, I think it's 1.5% of the U.S. population has that degree. And it's because it's just a lot of people start it. It's just the reading and the writing and all that. It's just straining.
Grueling.
Yeah, it's just grueling. The writing. Nate Bargatze, there's a comedian that a lot of people love, and he just talks about books and just there's so many words.
Yeah.
So many words. Just give me a picture. And so there are just these classes. There's so many words and just writing I think the older I get, I'm still young and all those things and thinking through this, but actual thought is pretty rare. You can think about it, just the next few days. How often have I actively paused and thought about something, not reacted? And so even just learning to reflect on something that's challenging, I think that was humbling. But then even as you reflect in a discipline like leadership, of just your own inadequacies in these things. Man, I just don't do this well. And you're reading all these stories of amazing leaders, and you just go, oh, man, there's a big gap between me and that. And in one sense, it motivates, and in another sense, it can be humbling. And I think that's good. But
I love your comment about thought.
Yeah.
We're so busy these days 100%. As individuals with technology and social media and cell phones and things like that. And it's amazing to me, the ideas that come to me in the shower or in these blank spaces.
That's right.
Where I can't do anything but think.
That's right. And they're really good ideas. Sometimes, but this was really helpful.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me, please, a little more about, so you're 22, 23 years old and somebody in grad school is calling you out as a leader. And then, I mean, my goodness, probably within 4 or 5 years, maybe 6, you're completing your PhD in organizational leadership.
Yeah, sure.
Talk about that transformation and that transition period.
Man, I don't know how much I've thought about that. I think, I think the Lord, the Lord's hand is orchestrating all things. And I think looking back, I think the growing burden, when I talk about, vision and leadership and things like that, I think the first step is what I would call a burden.
Yeah.
Vision is like when the burden is refined.
Yeah.
But burden's just a growing sense of, man, I want to do something. I want to change something.
Yeah.
And I think the growing sense I had in grad school, where we were training missionaries and people that we were scattering across the globe to address issues and help things. There was just a growing sense of, man, I want to get in the game. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And, as you grow in competence and knowledge, you go, like, I actually maybe have something to say. I don't have a lot to say.
Right.
But so I think those things start happening. And then, you just show up. So much in life just happens when, hey, I was an intern. I tell our interns all the time, I was an intern. I was the guy in the call center. And then you become a manager in the call center. And I think you're just taking the next right step, and not perfectly, but you pray humbly saying, hey, Lord, use me. And you kind of wake up one day and I think that's a biblical story, right? You just see often, hey, if you're faithful in a little, and I've not perfectly done that, and no one has, but I think that's where it came for me, is just kind of just being available and the Lord using that. I tell people, and this is not everybody's story, but I've almost never applied for a job, or you just kind of kept doing the next thing and trying to be a good steward and do more than they asked.
Yep.
My dad growing up would say, and obviously a lot of parents say this, but do what they ask you to do and a little more. Do what you do a little more.
Yep.
So in every role, if you're an intern, hey, what does it look like to treat this like a bigger role?
Mm-hmm.
Dress differently, not to impress, not to brown nose, but just to be a great steward. I mean, the Lord uses that. People notice that. And there's been a lot of grace shown to me, but I think just this, it's not as complicated as students often think.
Right.
And just show up on time, wear a belt, comb your hair, and work hard, and you can do a lot. You know, the Lord will use that. So that certainly helped me.
In a world that's from my personal humble opinion, lost its decorum.
100%.
Right. That can set you apart.
It goes a long way. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'd love to ask you a little bit about your time at Midwestern, and you know, in your bio, it emerged as one of the fastest growing schools in North America.
Yeah.
What do you believe brought that on?
Well, that's a great question. Honestly, there are a lot of. In fact, there's a book written about it that people can buy. I didn't write it. The president of the school wrote it, but it's called Turnaround.
Okay.
And it's been a best-selling book.
Yeah.
In our little Christian bubble, but it's a fantastic kind of story of what are some of the steps taken. So I was one of many there, not a key leader, I don't think in any way, but what we saw the Lord do is just bless humility, bless hunger.
Mm-hmm.
We woke up and worked really hard. But then I think at the end of the day, I've heard people say, if you can explain it, God didn't do it. And I would say 2 years in, if you had asked me this question and I had been honest with you, I would say, well, we did this. And there are things we recruited like crazy. And there was a great vision and networked and built goodwill and nurtured momentum and, all these things. But at the end of the day, a lot of schools were doing that. Mm-hmm. And there's just some sort of spiritual math that happened in Kansas City where 2 + 2 = 8 in a season. Wow. And so, I think that's true. Obviously, we had an amazing leader in Dr. Allen who wrote that book. I mean, just a uniquely gifted, happy, spiritual leader that was just kind of onward and uniquely gifted at being an executive where he's casting vision and those sorts of things, but also in the weeds. I mean, looking at data. I mean, I remember thinking he knew the enrollment data.
Wow.
Better than I did as, the one responsible for that stuff. And so he was just uniquely gifted. Lord used that. But it was a sweet, sweet time. They went from being a school that was likely to go out of business and to arguably the largest seminary in North America.
Wow.
And again,
over what time period?
Over about 10 years.
Okay.
So just crazy. So a lot of leadership lessons in that. One of the reasons I'm writing about fear and because you just felt like you were kind of attached to a rocket that you're trying to control a little bit, but you just don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about people, controlling chaos. That has really helped me here in this next stage. So,
I want to grab on to something that you mentioned, and you mentioned it a little differently. But what I've found, for those of us who are believers, for so long in my life, I set goals that were reasonable. Sure. They were goals that were, relatively speaking, within reach in my own power.
Sure.
And about 18 months ago, I was challenged to set God-sized goals that, like you talked about at Midwestern, that for that to happen, God was going to have to show up.
That's right. You couldn't do it yourself. You couldn't whiteboard that, right?
Yeah. And I'm at a point in my life, approaching 45, where some people, and I don't talk about these things very much because I get these reactions. They just quite frankly think I'm crazy when I talk about some of these things, right? And yet at 45, I'm okay with that.
That's right. Noah seemed pretty crazy.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, and how many other, characters, right? Yeah, and so I think that's fascinating. Yeah. As we draw close to our time, I'd love to understand that, in your bio was the word a desire to multiply kingdom leaders.
Yeah, sure.
What does that mean to you, and how are you going about that in your day-to-day life here at University of Mobile?
And I think I just talked about this at Preview Day, that I think the greatest tragedy, and I believe this like down to my bones. I believe it's down to my bones. The greatest tragedy in the world in 2026 is not what's happening in Ukraine. It's not happening somewhere in Africa. It's not happening in inner city violence somewhere here in the Southeast. I think it's people that are called to step into those places and use their God-given gifts to impact and advance those conversations, whatever God's calling them to in their career, that aren't even aware of that calling. And that's why I have a burden to just say, hey, you're made in the image of God. You're called to lead. It's just where. It's not if. It's where and how. So to me, and that is the big thing. So when we talk about multiplication, it's looking out and going, hey, the Lord right now is blessing and growing the University of Mobile. Man, we had record growth last fall. Yeah. We are. If I told you the numbers that we are seeing for the fall,
really,
we won't hit those, but it is just awesome. Yeah. Something's happening. Yeah. And so we want to go, okay, if we're going to be good stewards of that, we have to awaken this growing group of young men and women who are the coming generation leaders, and go, hey, you're up. And God has given you the skills and the gifts and the calling. It's going to be scary. It's going to be hard. The Lord hasn't promised anything but His presence and power and promises. But you're up, and that's what I mean. So we want to not just equip kingdom leaders. We want to have a multiplying effect that even those people embrace. Well, I'm called to do that with someone else,
right?
So that truly, you talk about crazy dreams. The crazy dream is from right here in Mobile County. The Lord would use us and many other people, churches and schools, and to awaken a generation, do our part in that, to what they're called to do to enrich our communities to the ends of the world. That's what we're called to do. So that's the multiplying kingdom leaders. Why do we do it? For God's glory, but importantly for the good of your neighborhood and my neighborhood and ultimately the world. So that's what animates us.
Man, that fires me up. That's awesome. Incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. So I am, Dr. Smith, I am so grateful for your generosity with your time and your thoughts on leadership. There's a lot of gems in there that I'm grateful and will marinate on, and I'm sure our audiences will too. So that's it for another episode of Legacy and Leadership with David McKeen. Please like, share, and subscribe to content. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Legacy and Leadership with David McKeen, and you're able to take away at least one nugget that you can implement in your daily life. If you've got questions or ideas for future shows, please feel free to reach out to me. You can call me at 251-648-6461, or you can email me at legacyandleadershipgoal@gmail.com. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.